Conas, how are ye? Welcome back to the Candlelit Tales podcast, where we tell Irish myth set to original music. My name is Aaron and I'm one half of the storytelling duo that makes up this company, and in this episode we'll continue our Fianna series, or the Fianna Saga as we're calling it, with Conan's Feast. He's one of the more cantankerous characters in the Fianna, and we love him for it. Now, this one is told by my sister Sorcha, and if you want to listen to our reflections and our chats to support this podcast, you can join our Candlelit crew by following the links in the description below. But for now, here's Sorcha. Tell us the story, will you?
Conán Maol Mac Morna was a difficult man. He was a difficult man to get along with. He was a difficult man to like. He had a tongue sharper than anyone. He was blunt. He was bald. He was ill-tempered. One of his only redeeming qualities, most of the Fianna agreed, was that he was always the first into battle. He was no coward. He would never, ever run from a fight. So, having him around could be a trial. But being able to point him at someone you didn't like was very gratifying. Conan was aware that he could be difficult to be around. Sometimes he would try to make up for this, and often his efforts would do more harm than good. But one winter he decided that he himself was going to host a feast. He was going to invite the Fianna. He was going to feast them. He was going to feed them. He was going to ply them with drink. He was going to make up for anything that they took personally, like anything that he might have said that might have rubbed somebody the wrong way, even though really that said more about them being oversensitive than it did about him. And so Conán Maol prepared a great feast. He'd never been what you might call civilised, and so it took him a long time to gather the wealth to spend on this one night. Because he was one of the Fianna and he was accustomed not to hold on to things, and for the first time now he held on. He held on to the treasures he found. He held on to the favours he did. And when the time came, he called them all in. Everyone he'd helped that past summer, everyone he'd given something to, he asked for it back now, in the form of meat or drink, or, someone pointed out to him, decoration, because his house was the house of a man who spent most of his time out of doors. So Conan gathered the finest silks that he could find, hangings for the wall, cushions for the seats even. Gathered the meat, gathered the drink. He even put the word out that he needed people to help him cook and serve and set the place and clean up afterwards. And when all was said and all was done, he sent the invitation to Fion McCool. He sent the invitation to Fion and the Fianna to come and enjoy his hospitality. And they did. They came and they enjoyed it very well. He put on a good spread. He did his best and he bit his tongue. They could see it. Moment after moment, he'd think of something witty to say and bite his tongue before he could say it. Instead, what he did was he asked Fion McCool to tell stories. And Fion was only too happy to oblige. Fion had long been on a quest for wisdom and more wisdom, and Conan asked him about that. And so Fion told him the story of how he had first burnt his thumb on the salmon of knowledge, and quenching that burn in his mouth had his mind opened up, and wisdom from everywhere filling him. And the truest thing, said Fion McCool, about wisdom is that the more of it you have, the more you know that you don't have very much of it. And so he was always looking for some way to get a little bit more, a little more wisdom, a little more than he had now. And so he went to a place in Limonach, a well that was said to have the power of the other world in Caharnary, and he asked the guardian of that well, a man named Bec MacBuan, to give him a drink from it, that he might taste the waters, that he might gain still more wisdom. And Bec said no, but Bec's daughter was tending the well, and Fion said that she gave him a little look, she gave him a little wink, and when he came a little bit closer, she accidentally spilled some of the water from the well into his mouth. And when he tasted that, his wisdom deepened. But the more you have of wisdom, the more you know that you don't have very much wisdom. And so, that following summer, Fion had seen a strange churl of a man going about with a great big fork and a pig between the tines, and he'd followed him into a strange country, and there were all kinds of strange things that happened when Fion received the hospitality of Cuana's house. But the most important thing was that there were 2 wells in the lawn of the house, and Fion took a draught from each. The first tasted sweet to begin with, but was bitter going down, poisoned him even. And the second was the worst thing that he had ever tried to drink. Bitter as gall, but as soon as he swallowed it, he felt better. And his host there told him that the first had been the water of lies and the second the water of truth, and so with that little bit of wisdom gained, Fion realised that he still did not have very much wisdom. And there in his telling, Fion paused. And he asked another of the Fianna to recount a tale. He asked them to tell a story of some great conquest or some adventure in the other world, and when the attention was off him, Fion pulled Gull Mac Morna aside, Conán Maol's brother. And he said, "Listen, Gull, I know your brother is on good behaviour tonight, and I have it in my mind to tell him another story about another time that I went looking for wisdom, but I thought I'd run it by you first because I don't know if it would be wise." Gull looked at him and said, "Go on," squinting with his one eye. Fion said, he told him this story. He and Conán Maol had been a-hunting, just the 2 of them, out in the wilderness. And as sometimes happened in those long summer nights, mist came down around them and they wandered long until they were lost. And when the mist lifted, not a tree, not a rock was familiar to either of them, although they'd both been up and down around Ireland many times. And both would swear there was not a sod of the country they didn't know, and so by that they knew that they were in the other world. And they wandered a while, Conan griping and Fion a little worried. It always paid to keep your wits about you in the other world. And then they saw a little house, and they saw the light spilling through the window and around the door, making it glow. And they went up to the little house and they knocked. And a young woman opened the door, greeted them by name, which happened sometimes in the other world, but invited them in to enjoy her hospitality. And so by that they knew that they'd be safe, for the people of the other world took hospitality very seriously. And when she had them inside, the woman told them that she would grant them each a wish. Now Fion held back. He wanted to ask her for wisdom. He wanted to wish for more wisdom, but the tiny little bit of wisdom that he had warned him that it would be better to wait and let Conan speak first. Sure enough, Conán Maol squinted at the woman and he said, "Anything I want." She said, "Yes. Anything at all. I could wish for treasure," she said. "You could wish for immense piles of treasure. It will be provided for you, and no fairy gold that blows away. Ask me for anything. But think on it. Ask me for your heart's desire, the thing you want the most in all the world." Conán Maol glared into the fire for a while, And then he looked up at her and he said, "Anything." She said, "Anything, Conán Maol, ask me what you desire." Conan said, "You know, there's an old story of a great warrior from the north, from Tory Island, that fought against the Tuatha De Danann. His name was Balor of the Evil Eye. And he had but to look at an enemy and they dropped down dead. Now, that might be a bit hard to control, just having an evil eye, so I'd like that power, but I'd like it only to work if I look at someone from between my fingers." And the woman of the other world looked at him and said, "Is that your wish? That you have the power to kill instantly anyone you look at from between your fingers?" And Conan said, "Yes, that's my wish. It's what I want." And Conan turned in for the night after that, and Fion sat up by the fire, worried. And the woman asked him, "Well, Fion McCool, what's your wish? You're known for wanting wisdom and more wisdom. And what does your wisdom tell you now?" And Fion asked her, "Have you granted Conán Maol this power?" She said, "I have." Fion said, I wish for him not to know. I wish for him never to know that he has the power to kill with a glance. Because I think that would be unwise for him to have this power and to know it." And the woman smiled at him, told him his wish was granted, and Fion went on to spend the night, and he and Conan woke up in the world of men again after that, and Conan cursed and grumbled that he'd wasted a wish and it had never been granted, and Fion said nothing. And so Fion asked Gull, after telling him that story, "You know, he's been trying so hard to do better, with this feast, with this hospitality, with everything. He's doing his best. He doesn't mean to be so brusque always. I think he has a good heart, your brother. Should I tell him? There are fights, there are battles that we get into as the Fianna. There are times when we are sore pressed. And if he knew that he could kill an army by looking at them between his fingers, should I not tell him that he has this power, that this weapon is literally in his hands?" And Gull Mac Morna looked at Fion McCool out of his one eye and said, "Are you out of your mind? He must never know. My brother might have a good heart sometimes when the wind is westerly and the moon is waning. But he just as often has the sourest heart that has ever beat in the chest of a man. If he knew that he could kill a man by looking at him through his fingers, all it would take is a bad mood. He'd get annoyed at somebody. He'd lose an argument with Dardove. He'd be outrun by Quilcha. And he'd put his fingers in front of his eyes and he'd wish us all dead. And he might feel bad about it afterwards. In fact, I think he probably would feel bad about it afterwards. But he wouldn't be able to undo it. He must never, ever, ever find out that he has this power." And Fion reflected on the wisdom of Gull's words. Fion watched Conán Maol the rest of that night very closely, saw how he had bitten his tongue raw, holding back the barbed comments that he wanted to say. And Fion noticed, in the days that followed, in the years that followed, that when Conán Maol would insult someone or belittle them or hurt their feelings, the first thing he'd say would be, "Sure, didn't I throw you a feast? And you're never after throwing me a feast. I'm awful generous to you and I get nothing back in return. And so Fion, year after year, kept his own counsel. And he never told Conán Maol Mac Morna, with the sheepskin on his back, with the quick temper that was on him, that all he had to do to kill an enemy was look at them from between his fingers.